The Autumn Internationals grow even closer. We are getting right up to it now, surprisingly so, as it still feels like the season's only just begun.
Yep.
And yet, here we are. Wales have now finally unveiled the entire coaching panel for this year's Autumn Internationals. Now, we knew a few of them already. We knew Steve Tandy's taken over as head coach, which we've talked about in the past. Matt Sherritt, we didn't discuss this, coming as attack coach. Danny Wilson, I know. He seems so desperate to never be involved in an international job again. And then here he is. Danny Wilson has come in as forwards coach, having come in from being head coach of Quins and Sherritt from being head coach of Cardiff. They've now announced 3 further appointments. We have Danny Lydiate, a second Danny in the coaching team, as defence coach, Reece Patchell as kicking coach, and alongside them, Duncan Jones as forwards coach.
Yeah.
What's your initial impression on this unit they've brought together?
I've got 2 very different opinions on this. The first one, on the back of what we've just experienced as Welsh fans, seething, because of the fact that they've been able to just give endless amounts of coaches to the men's team, whilst letting the women's team just coast on essentially a 3-piece band with 2 supporting musicians, like going on tour with them. That's essentially what the Welsh coaching team is, that they're just relying on and they are skimping out on. And at this point, and I get, there's more money in men's rugby than there is in women's rugby. So you have to give them a little bit more in terms of resources. I completely understand that. But I don't believe it's proportionate what they are doing. And so on the back of the heartache of going out and a possible worst ever World Cup that I've witnessed as a Welsh fan.
Yeah. It's the worst World Cup Wales ever put in a woman.
Yeah. And that, being completely winless, that is still quite sour to me, and that this is the next international campaign that I, as a Welsh fan, have had. And the large thing that we put Wales's lack of success down to is the lack of resources in the coaching team.
Yeah.
And the fact that they've done just immediately just gone all right, Steve, have as many coaches as you want, does stink a little bit to me.
Sure.
However, obviously, if I just look optimistically, that campaign's done and dusted.
Yeah.
Hopefully, by the 2025,
we've got to hope
2026
it's something
rather,
they've learned from.
Women's Six Nations, they will change that, and they will also go, Sean Lynn, how many coaches do you want? So, to answer your actual question, what I think of that as a coaching unit, they're all great lads, aren't they? They're all people that I'm a big fan of. Dan Lydiate, he's not been coaching long. 2 out of 3 of them haven't been coaching long.
We were talking about what does the Welsh squad look like yesterday.
Yeah.
And you said, let's just call up Dan Lydiate. Yeah. It's been a couple of years since we last had him in the squad.
Yeah.
Let's call him up. And sure enough, Steve Tandy listened to you.
And there we were doing our work
squad
today, and I went, oh my God, Wales have called up Dan Lydiate. And you went, what? And there we are. So Dan Lydiate, again, he has not been coaching long.
He retired just over a year ago. Played his final game against the Ospreys, kind of fittingly his 2 clubs he played for a long time, Dragons and Ospreys, against each other. Retired there to a standing ovation, went off, lived on the farm for a bit, as he indeed continues to, and then went back into coaching and took up coaching again mid-season last year. So he's been coaching for a few months. He is yet to coach a team that has won a game.
Yeah. He's the mastermind behind the Dragons' defence.
Yes.
Here.
So he came in after Philo Tia was bumped up to be head coach.
Yes. Now, it's important. He's not the necessarily primary defence coach in the Welsh setup. That is not stated.
I
would imagine. Yes. And that is it. He is very much the assistant to Steve Tandy on defence. I would imagine he's a specialist chop tackle coach. I'm guessing that's why they've got him in.
Most of Steve Tandy's time at the Ospreys, he was the defence coach. They didn't have a defence coach. And it became a massive problem because he had one season where they were letting in try after try after try. And clearly he was stretched too thin. He brought in Brad Davis as his defence coach, who was at Wasps before that. Went on to have a spell with Australia and Eddie Jones. And also a little bit of England as well under Eddie Jones. Eddie Jones loved him. Was a shouty Australian man, so of course Eddie Jones loved him. But had a year or so there before eventually that kind of relationship, I think, broke down. I think Brad Davis left and then things went apart after that. However, Tandy has a history of, as a head coach, being the primary defence coach, right? And it was quite a big deal, I think, for him personally when he brought in a defence coach alongside and went, okay, this is what we need to do, is bring someone else to run it. And Brad Davis was the first one I remember noticing of that kind of style of defence coaches like John Nineber, who like to stand on the sideline and shout at people to get up on their face. And he was the first one I remember seeing do that. First at Wasps and then at the Ospreys and then later Australia and so on. And Tandy is not that. Right, no. Tandy is you sit in the box, you sit calmly, you trust them, you drill them, you get them emotionally right before the game and at half time, and then you sit back and you let them do the job. And I wonder if you want to bring in someone who is more hands-on.
Yeah.
Someone who is more kind of very direct, to say in tackle technique, in Dan Lydiate has a reputation, right? He's the greatest chop tackler the game's ever seen.
Yeah.
I don't think that's too controversial a statement.
He's right up there, at the very least.
And
he's certainly the best one that Wales has ever seen.
Yes. You bring in Dan Lydiate if you want them doing that, right? You don't bring in the Dragons defence coach because they just hit 49 points at the weekend.
Yeah.
Like, you don't bring in the Dragons defence coach because they haven't won a game in over a year. Or they haven't won a league game in over a year. You bring him in because you've got a particular style in mind.
Yeah.
And because you've got someone to complement what you want to do.
And that is, I think, the interesting part of this, because under Mike Forshaw, the Welsh defence was very much about holding people up and stopping them on the gain line and making it tricky for them to get their ball press. Whereas I think for this, it's going to be really different, because Dan Lydiate, as you say, he's a chop tackle expert. It is the thing that he is best at, right? That he built a whole career and got, 50 plus caps off the back of being the best at that, as you say. And so you would imagine that the Tandy system will be about fly off the line, chop them, get Jack Morgan contesting as many breakdowns as physically possible.
Well, one of the interesting things, we don't know the squad yet as well, it may be, there is a way you can pack that
assuming Jack Morgan's in there, Tipperick could get in yet.
You can pack that entire Welsh pack with jackal options.
Yeah.
Like, there is a player in every position who is a jackal threat, pretty much, like, across the board. So it's possible he picks that team yet, right? And we look at that and we see this picture kind of take shape when the squad's named next week.
Yeah.
The thing about Steve Tandy that's really interesting is part of the reason he's rated as one of the best defence coaches in the world is because his teams adapt their defence.
Yeah.
He doesn't have one set style, right? He changed his defence strategy with Scotland over the course of the years he was there. He changed it with the Ospreys over the years he was there. They defended differently, right? Based on what was working, based on sometimes even opposition.
It was often on personnel as well. You look
personnel.
at in the era where they had Chris Harris playing centre, they put so much on him to choose whether it was a blitz or a drift.
Yeah.
Then as soon as it became the Hugh Pilotu centre combo, it was right, we're getting off the line.
Yeah, it was much faster and more up and blitzy.
Yeah.
And I think that's the interesting thing about Steve Tandy is that he can and will coach a variety of styles.
Yeah.
And he won't be, okay, we're playing in a set way. Even when he was a head coach, right? Like the Ospreys went from an attacking team to a very defensive and kick team to an attacking team again to a shit team.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the whole progression there. And so I think we will see him probably adapt. And it may be that he runs a style of defence in this autumn. And then the critical thing about Duncan Jones, Dan Lydiate and Reece Patchell is they're on short-term deals. Yeah. They're only here for the autumn. Duncan Jones is heading off next week after the Ospreys play Glasgow, and then the other two are joining. Well, the Ospreys playing the Dragons the week after, right? So I assume they just thought it was fair to take all the coaches away before that game. So they're all heading in there. They'll then be back for the first game after the autumn. They'll be back in a few days after the autumn campaign concludes. They're not signed up for the Six Nations. Yeah. They said these are very much interim appointments. So it may be that he appoints someone that defends in a completely different way for the Six Nations, or because it's his first campaign as a head coach, both for quite a while. You're going back to, 2018, he got fired as Ospreys coach in January. So that's quite a long time. And also, right, first as international head coach, possibly just wants some help out on his first campaign, right? And then
the other thing about
the defence coach after that.
You look at Dan Lydiate and Reece Patchell; they were both quite recent Welsh internationals, and so having somebody who's just kind of a peg down from where he is, and Jonathan Humphreys, who's still in there, is that somebody who's a bit closer to the players. That might be a good idea. Yeah.
So Neil Jenkins remains in as skills coach. We have an additional kicking coach in Reece Patchell. Now the women's team. That is the point I wanted to make, right? Because the women's team probably lacked a kicking coach majorly. And yet,
well, they had a kicking coach. They didn't have a backs coach. Was the issue.
Yeah.
They had a kicking coach as the backs coach.
Yeah.
And trying to double up and do both jobs at once, which we learned was not a good idea.
Exactly. So the men's team now have an attack coach and two kicking coaches because Neil Jenkins is still there alongside Reece Patchell. It makes me wonder something. Ever since Richard Wigglesworth was appointed as kick strategy coach for England, and he's now a defence coach, so he just does whatever, but I have felt like, that's going to happen more and more. We're going to get into a place like the NFL, right, where they have coaches for literally every tiny bit of the game who specialise in that and have a coaching panel of 20 people. I wonder whether we're going to see more and more of this and we're going to see more big coaching panels. I like that Steve Tandy's approach has been, I'll just get everyone in. I'll have 30 coaches, we'll outnumber the players and we'll beat them up if they don't play well. But I wonder if that's Patchell's primary job is kick strategy and kick reflection on the game, because he's an incredibly wise thinker on the game.
Yeah.
Real strategist and somebody who reflects on it.
Reece Patchell, for context, for anyone who's kind of unfamiliar with the career trajectory he had.
Yeah.
So as like an 18, 19-year-old, he was incredibly hyped up in Wales as like the next big thing. And he was really uncomfortable with this. And he just wanted to be like given the chance to just get his head down and do his own thing. He's an incredibly like intelligent bloke who is a proper student of the game, as you say. And he had a really good career with Wales. Like I think he was a bit of a fan favourite at Cardiff and the Scarlets when he was there as well. Won the Pro
league
14
with Cardiff,
with the Scarlets. Like he's a brilliant player. Yeah. And then towards the last few, sort of 5 or 6 years of his career, he decided he wanted to move around and learn how rugby is played elsewhere. Yeah. So, you know, he played down south with the Highlanders. He played in Japan for a couple of years. You know, like he's played around the globe a little bit because he wanted to learn and he wanted to work with specific coaches. Yeah. And a lot of the times that was his motivation for moving around was they've got a certain coach or player that I want to work with and learn off.
He was left out of 2 Wales squads in a row by Wayne Pivac. And despite Pivac being his coach at the Scarlets and loving him, being like very indebted to him, he was left out 2 squads in a row. He was, I think, told by Pivac, possibly, I don't know the details of this, but like, we're not viewing you as a long-term option.
Yeah.
And he went, okay, I could stay here and I could continue playing in Wales. I could go and play in France or England, but I've got an offer in New Zealand, and he wanted to learn more about the game.
Yeah.
Because he had a long-term view to coaching. He started coaching when he was 18. Like, he's been coaching, like, to a decent level right the way through. I interviewed him quite a few years ago now, like, what was it, 2019? Yeah, late 2019, so a long time ago now, right? But, like, he talked about his coaching, and he talked about how, like, he'd been coaching for a few years, and he was, you know, head coach, and how, like, he had a policy of having, like, a few games a season where he told them they're not allowed to kick the ball from not behind their own try line, in order to encourage, you know, passing and heads-up rugby kind of deal. And then, you know, also work on their kicking and skills individually so that they still have those as options, but they're always thinking about the game wider rather than going on instinct and going on that. That does intrigue me because he's a thinker in the game rather than a technician, rather than someone who's going to go, well, you want to swing your leg in. And obviously he can do that as well, right? Like he's a professional. But I'm really intrigued by what he's going to bring and what that looks like.
Yeah. With him and Steve Tandy in particular as a combination really fascinates me because you think of Steve Tandy because he dealt with a lot of the kick strategy with Scotland as the defence coach. Yeah. Like that does also fall under Tandy's remit a little bit. And they had, for instance, like Jamie Ritchie and his role on kick chase, that they used Jamie Ritchie as a winger to pat down the ball to try and get Duhan van der Merwe into space. Yeah. So he could pick up scraps, pick up deflections, because both him and Darcy Graham, and also like Blair Kinghorn and Stuart Hogg when they had him, like were really good in those situations in unstructured scenarios.
Stain,
Rowe. Exactly. There are endless back three players that Scotland had who were brilliant at that. And I would imagine that Steve Tandy has identified something about Wales, and the identity of their back three, bar maybe Blair Murray, is incredibly different to the Scottish players that we've just talked about. But I don't know, he's potentially seen something there and gone, right, I need Patch's input on how can we turn this slot into, how can we get these opportunities? Yeah. Is it kicking long and hoping for counter-attack off the back of there? Is it going contestably and trying to pick up scraps? Is it getting these guys after the ball so they can be dominant in the air themselves and make good carries and get them in tight? You know, there's probably something that he's thought about and he's gone, I want to bounce off Patch here because he's probably got a different idea to me.
The interesting thing is the fact that he has appointed an extra kicking coach. He's seen that as necessary. Now,
and it's not Lee Halfpenny as well.
That's it, right. So the Ospreys don't have a separate kicking coach. I don't know. Well, James Hook's done bits. James Hook's now given up on coaching, but he was academy coach and he was brought in to do more last season. Yeah. As like working with the seniors as a kicking coach, purely for goal kicking and the kicking for length and so on. He was never part of the formal setup, right? Sure. So he wasn't like of a level where he'd be put.
Again, he's a touring musician,
and he's also exactly, and he's also just left like given up coaching in the last few weeks. You then have Cardiff, whose kicking coach is now Lee Halfpenny, who has been in that job for a few weeks, went on tour with Wales in the summer as the kicking coach with Neil Jenkins given the summer off to put his feet up and probably do some more goal kicking of his own in the fields down in Ponty.
His favourite thing.
And Halfpenny went with the under-20s a few years ago. He is primarily, right, a kicking coach in the mould of Neil Jenkins, who he's worked with since he was about 14. So he is a kicking coach who is looking at goal kicking and your technique. Yeah. And Patchell is, I would imagine, not that. Yeah. But he's also only been in the job for a few months. And a little bit of this, is it him going, we haven't got that many options in Wales of people we can get, realistically, but I want a kicking coach? Or is it he's going, there's something about Reece Patchell I like? We can't know that yet. Dan Lydiate, there are more options. There are more defence coaches. I'd imagine, right, if the Ospreys or whoever else have let someone go, have let Duncan Jones go, Cardiff have let Matt Sherritt go. They're all in this moment of collaboration. They all probably want to suck up the WE with the drama going on behind the scenes as well.
Sure.
They all want like to be good books for playing nice with you. He probably had his pick of anyone at the Regions in terms of defence coaches available, and he went down Lydiate.
Yeah.
And that says a lot, I think.
Yeah.
That's the interesting part of that.
Yeah.
Because clearly he's prioritising something there.
And again, I like your theory that he's gone for somebody who's very different in approach to himself. You know,
Yeah.
you look at what Dan Lydiate was like as a captain back in the day. Like he was fierce and aggressive, and that's what he was like as a rugby player, right?
Yeah.
As much as he is like a laugher and a joker and a jolly guy off the pitch, like as soon as you're down to business, he's a serious guy.
Yeah. Also worth a mention, Linebreak Rugby's excellent post on Blue Sky that Dan Lydiate, as a farmer, as a lifelong farmer, has spent his entire life preparing cattle for the slaughter, which is perfect preparation for training Wales.
Yes, indeed.
This autumn.
So yeah, last person to talk about, Duncan Jones.
Yeah.
Extremely well liked at the Ospreys and has been a really good scrum coach for them. That he has brought up, you know, from when he joined, I think it's safe to say the Ospreys weren't a dominant scrum, sort of in the ORC within the league, and now like. I wouldn't say they're like one of the best scrums in Europe, but they compete with the best scrums in Europe. They hold their own.
Before Nicky Smith left, they were.
Yeah.
Like they were right up there.
Very true.
They were regularly taking apart scrums, you know, like Montpellier, Leicester, Leinster, like Munster.
No one punches above their weight like Nicky Smith does.
No.
Props. Like.
No. And obviously Nicky Smith's now gone to Leicester and you kind of like slightly more beleaguered in the fact you've only really got one front line scrum.
Sure.
With, you know, Gareth Thomas, Dewi Lake and Tom Bota. But you look at the way in which he has trained the likes of Reece Henry, you know, and even like Ben Warren came on and was excellent at the weekend, and like Garen Phillips, the way he's come through as a young prop, like came through, was a pretty bad scrummager, is now more than holding his own.
Yeah.
A lot of that is the coaching. A lot of that is Duncan Jones will train scrummagers to be better than they are. Like the anecdote about Duncan Jones I point to is Tom Francis coming inside for the Ospreys. So all the Welsh Regions went after Tom Francis when he was leaving Exeter, and he went to meet with all of them. 3 of them went in and went, "You're brilliant, here's our facilities, we'd love to have you, we love you so much." Duncan went in, went, "There's the gym, there's the showers, there's where you park your car. Come in." Sat him down in front of a laptop, played him some clips of him, went, "You're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, this is shit, you need to work on this. Come with me and I'll tell you how you can be a better player."
Yeah.
And Tom Francis signed there and then, because he was like, "Oh, this is it. Like, this is the guy." And that period at the Ospreys was the only period in his career where Tom Francis was a dominant scrummager, where he was a scrummager who was aggressive and got under people and like won scrum penalties rather than just prevented the opposition doing it. And I don't know, I think that's clearly the kind of scrummager Duncan Jones likes, right? He isn't someone that is like a conservative scrummager. He isn't about you getting the ball in and out. He isn't about using it as a launch pad. He is like, we go forward, we win penalties.
It's a weapon.
Yeah. And now, Wales are playing South Africa this autumn. It won't happen there.
We all remember what happened last time.
Yeah.
Yeah, when Thomas du Toit munched Archie Griffin.
The way Wales this summer against Japan, the scrum was very up and down.
Yeah.
And likewise, even in the Six Nations. I am really intrigued to see what Duncan Jones can do with the raw materials he's given, and also how this impacts prop selection. Yeah. Because I think we will see a different squad selected for these guys being the people they brought in.
I'm glad that you said that, because the last thing I want to talk about here is this increases the odds of Reece Henry getting a Wales cap.
Genuinely, though.
The glorious man that is Reece Henry.
Well, Wales' first choice tight end the last few years has been Archie Griffin, who was third choice for Bath, and who was a decent scrummager, but he's not a dominant, like, aggressive scrummager. Reece Henry is. Like, I genuinely think this probably, like, boosts Reece Henry's chances for Wales this autumn drastically.
Make it happen.
Like, again, you look at the scrummagers Wales were picking under Sherritt and Gatland, right? And those tight heads were guys who were good around the field. Like, I think we might see Duncan go in. No. You think of the conversation he had with you, right, when we were in the Ospreys camp, and
remind me.
Okay, no, well, he went to like bring you into forwards training.
Oh yeah.
And you said you'll be working. You won't be playing hooker at the weekend, and then you went, "Oh, I'll work on my line-out phrase." He went, no line-outs. We only come at the scrums here. And that guy's now the forwards coach.
Yeah, I did not get selected to play hooker against Munster that weekend, unfortunately.